Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Jordan Metzl. I am a sports medicine physician at the Hospital for Special Surgery and a dedicated lifelong runner. And I'm so thrilled to be here today with you and joined by really one of the great icons, if not the icon in running, Meb Keflezighi. So I'm thrilled on behalf of HSS and on behalf of the New York Road Runners Club to bring Meb and a conversation with Meb to you today. And many of you, in fact, all of you know Meb. Meb is the only person to win the Boston Marathon, the New York Marathon, and an Olympic medal. He won the Boston Marathon the year after the Boston bombing in one of the most inspirational videos coming down Boylston Street that you will ever see. And he is such a terrific person, in addition to being a terrific runner and ambassador for our sport. So Meb, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome.
Hey, Dr. Metzl, thanks for having me. It's great to be back with you. And thanks for HSS and the New York Road Runners for allowing us to have this opportunity.
Absolutely. So Meb, running is always important. And I know for people that run all the time, running is a big part of the fabric of their lives. And certainly most of the people watching today's video are runners who are going to be enthusiastic about running. But when times are difficult, after 9/11, after the Boston bombing, times like now, running sometimes takes on a different importance than even it does normally. So I'm wondering, in your own experience, as somebody who's run forever, what role does running have in your life now? And maybe how's that changed since everything has happened in the past several months?
I mean, running has done everything for me. It's my lifestyle, but it wasn't always my job. It was a passion that I had when I was in 7th grade PE class to run for physical education, just lifestyle. And we see kids run, and I was one of those fortunate kids that when Coach Duke Lord in 7th grade, he said, PE class, that if you run hard, you're going to get an A and you're going to get a t-shirt. And well, I started running hard to get an A and a t-shirt. And to his surprise and mine, I ended up running a 5:20 mile, 5 minutes and 20 seconds. And he says, you're going to go to the Olympics. But, you know, that was in 7th grade. You have to work hard. You have to persevere. You have to eat right, sleep right, and do the training to be an Olympian. But it became a kind of lifestyle, almost kind of like some kind of addiction that is, for me personally, it's a good addiction to have. When I run, I feel better. I think better. And it's been a lifestyle now that I'm a father. And hopefully the sports is something that I'm really excited about. And running is something that you can do for the rest of your life. I mean, it's something that you need a pair of shoes and shorts and shirts, and if it's called a beanie or gloves and things like that. But it's pretty simple to get started. It's the hardest thing to accomplish a marathon or whatnot, but to get started, and especially with the pandemic going on, you need your shoes, and you maybe just need to run around the block to start with. You didn't have to go a mile, just around the block, and do that 21 days of habits. If you can do that, and then eventually you don't have to do 21 days in a row, but little by little, and you're like, oh, I can go block, I can go a mile, and then before you know it, you might be doing a 5K, and you got the bug.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Meb, I want to start maybe starting back with your early life, because everybody knows, the Meb running down Boylston Street. Everybody knows the Meb winning the New York Marathon. Everybody remembers the Olympic medal, one of the first for the United States in marathoning. But not everybody knows, how you started your life and the hurdles you overcame to get to the United States. I come from a family of immigrants. My dad immigrated to the United States after the Second World War, and pushed all of us, his kids, in a great way. And we've all kind of been pushed on to do things. And I always love your backstory, and I think it's particularly important now, because we're at a time when the hardship keeps coming, and it feels like in some ways putting one foot in front of the other is so important. So I thought it might be neat to share with everybody the beginning part of your life, just because I think people don't know that as well. So if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about kind of where you were born and how you ended up being in San Diego and how you ended up getting out here. So let's start with that.
Thanks, Dr. Metzl. Yeah, I mean, many people know me as a marathon runner, or winning the Boston Marathon or New York or the Olympic silver medal. But my humble beginning started in Eritrea, which is in the Horn of Africa, northeast. And there was a war that lasted for 30 years against the Ethiopian for independence, Ethiopia and Eritrea. And, I grew up without electricity, no running water. We have to go to the well to get the water. And that might be a mile and a half, or maybe sometimes two if there's no one, nothing in that well. And you have to go to climbing trees to get barks of the tree or leaves so you can come home with a basket here. You have fire to cook your meals or boil the water. There's no bathrooms. You have to go outside. And I remember I was so poor at one point that I ate dirt to survive. You know, it's because your mind tells you go deep into the dirt of the floor and until it's moist enough. It's not pavement, obviously. You know, you have to dig deep in the dirt and to be able to do that, and you chew it. And but you know, my dad has to walk over 225 miles and to save his life, and he was leaving behind a wife and 5 kids and one on the way. But you can read the whole thing on Run to Overcome. But I could give you the gist of it. It took him 7 days of not knowing where he was going to land, no hotel rooms, no place to stay, no meal to eat, except he had. No, we're talking about survivor here in a different way, but canteen of water, bag of barley, a stick for protection, matches in case the hyenas come to him, and he can surround when he sleeps in the wilderness. He can build a little fire camp and he can light a match in case the hyenas come and things like that. So, and he can't sleep on the floor because, you know, hyenas, scorpions, snakes, and whatnot. So he has to sleep on the tree, cross his legs. So it was definitely the grace of God that he made it. And then after doing that, he looked out for his kids, you know. But my mom and dad promised each other that hopefully he make it a safe land. Once he makes the safe land, that baby that was not born yet, you know, if it's a girl, call him Amina. If it's a boy, call him Benes, which we trust, we believe that I'll look after you guys. And it happened to be a boy, but you know, once he made a safe land, he never forgot us and, you know, commitment to my mom, and saved us to come to Italy. And it wasn't an easy one. I didn't see my father for 5 years, from the age of 5 to 10. And it was, you know, here, you know, when he sees kids on a stroller or ages buying shoes or clothes, he has no idea, you know, 6 of his kids are what size they are. You know, he just got asked the Italians, how old is your son and what kind of shoes does he wear, or t-shirt and things like that. So, but you know, it was five boys and 1 girl. So whatever, if it was big for me, it would go to my older brothers, and if it was small for the oldest one, it would go to the other, and stuff like that. But we survived it. And then when we lived in Italy, when I first saw him, I ran into him. I mean, Papa, and then he goes, "Not Howie," which is my youngest brother by 4 years, and I go, "No, it's Meb," and he's like, "Oh my kids," he went to tears because his expectation did not meet his reality, and he thought I would be bigger and stronger and taller and whatnot. And bear in mind, we were the first time we ever got on a flight, and my mom, poor lady, she didn't speak the language. It was first time for all of us on the plane. She's like, "Don't worry about their sizes or their weights. That just make sure all 6 of them are here," because for her for 5 years was a big burden to be the mother and the father of the family. And now peace of mind came. And then we came on October 21st, 1987. We went through New York, which I didn't know was New York, but on the airport. And we came to the beautiful United States, the land of opportunity, after living in Italy for a year and a half. And my parents told us, this is an opportunity that I didn't have, your mom didn't have, your uncles don't have, your cousin don't have, don't waste it. Make sure you work hard. In America, it rewards hard work, so don't waste it. And that's when I talked about that 7th grade PE class earlier. And I wanted to get A. I don't want to disappoint my parents. I want to get A in every class that I can, even though it was hard. I mean, English is a hard language, but through perseverance, he woke us up at 4:30 in the morning to learn English through the dictionary before going to 7:30 o'clock class. So I do empathize for the people who wake up at 4 o'clock or 4:30 to go for a run to get ready for preparation for a marathon, a half marathon. And I understand that hard work you have to do. I might be gifted running, but there were other obstacles in my life that kind of similar challenges.
Yeah, I think that's anytime we've ever spoken, and I always think about, you know, the family experience of so many immigrants who've come. I don't know if I told you, but when my dad, they escaped the Holocaust in Europe, and they ended up on a boat coming from England after the war to the United States. And his dad woke him up as they sailed by the Statue of Liberty and held his hand and said, "We're going to be all right here." And then had to start, you know, working and working from the ground up, and ended up like your family with all of the kids are doctors, the same kind of thing, just pushing the kids in a way that, you know, we want you to be successful. And I think the reason I think that's such an important background in your life, and I think a background in my life, is that we're faced with this really tough time now. And I think the lessons that we've learned from ourselves and from our parents, and pushing onward when things are very, very difficult, has been so important not only for running or for being a doctor or for whatever, but also just for trying to put one foot in front of the other when times are difficult. And I think that running teaches us so much about life. When it's, you know, mile 25 of a marathon is really hard for anybody, I think, even for you. And so running teaches us about life and how we have to put one foot in front of the other. And I think that the lessons from hardship in our families is so important. I don't know if you think the same.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a marathon is a metaphor for life. When you prepare the details that, you know, you can't achieve marathon just snap of a finger. You know, you got to be able to be dedicated, committed, and pay attention to details. And that's where we are right now with the coronavirus 19. You have to pay attention to the small details that will be healthy. If you are healthy, problem. And I think having done sports helps you be patient. You know that there is a finish line, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it. But if you are injured and you overcome those things, you know, even with surgery, sometimes, you know, you're at the hospital, you got to go to home after being in the hospital for safety, whether it's 5 days, 3 days, 2 days, whatever it might be. And then you have to go home and you can't even, you're on crutches trying to walk, but it doesn't seem you can run a half 5K or go outside and run. You don't have that vision yet, but you know there is, because you have to trust the knowledgeable people who can help you achieve those goals slowly but surely. And you have to have a communication of what you are feeling or what are you having problems with, so you can get a guidance from, you know, I always say half of the problem is knowing the problem, and then the solution will come eventually. So yeah, and we are very fortunate in the United States, and people can contain hopefully this virus and others, and to bring us back to what we used to enjoy in the past.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And your career has been so incredible, from early young athlete, young Meb, winning the T-shirt and realizing he was an exceptional runner. It sounds like you didn't even know how good you were. You just won the shirt in 7th grade, and then everything took off from there to Olympic Meb, to marathon winning Meb. I think of all the different stories I've heard you talk about and have shared with you over time. I think that story of taking a turn on Boylston Avenue and coming down the year after the Boston bombing is probably the most powerful. And I think in a lot of ways for where we are right now, people, you know, trying to look forward and to be positive, but also being afraid, and using running as an important part of maintaining their physical and mental health. I think that story of you winning the Boston Marathon the year after the bombing was really a powerful story. So I'm wondering if you might just tell us a little bit about what that was like coming down and around down Boylston particularly.
Absolutely, Dr. Metzl. It's interesting what life can throw at you. Who would ever thought when I was graduating high school, people used to say, "Don't forget the small people. You're gonna go to the Olympics." But I didn't believe that personally. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to UCLA, get my degree, work hard, and whatnot. But people had believed in me. But 1997 was when I first thought maybe I could do this as a profession. I think I could make an Olympic team. But to be able to win the silver medal was a dream come true for me. And you think, you know, you want a medal for your country, you want even more the next time around. And then 2008, I had a big setback. I even contemplated retiring November 07 because the trials was in New York. I didn't make the team. My good friend Ryan Shea passed away. So there was a lot of, you know, mentally, physically, emotionally, I was defeated, but never give up of hope. And who would ever thought a year and a half later, I saw 50 doctors trying to get healthy, and I had pelvis chest fracture, which I didn't know for 10 weeks. And then I overcame that and winning the New York City Marathon. That was my personal gold medal. But then in 2013, I was at the Boston Marathon as a spectator, because I usually don't get to see my fellow runners because I'm doing drug testing or media obligation. But that day I said, you know, let me just sit at the grandstand and watch beautiful runners come across the finish line. And I stayed there for about 4 hours, and I left 5-8 minutes before it happened because I had an appointment. And who would ever know that what a beautiful day turned out to be catastrophic, and just a lot of life taken away from us and a lot of wounds. And, you know, since that afternoon, Bonnie Ford from ESPN asked me if I'm going to come, or am I scared? Am I going to bring my family? And I said, yeah, I would love to be here, and I hope to be healthy enough to win it for the people. So when you say something to people, you are accountable for, and I live my life that way, set goals. And, you know, and like you said, April 21st, 2014, to be able to just lead the 36,000 people who want to do something positive on Boston, to whatever capability that we have or whatever our talents might be, just the energy. And for me to come across that Boston street chanting USA, USA, or, fist bumping and doing the cross at where the bombing happened. And, some dreams do come in reality, and some of them come a lot later than you anticipate. It's not for lack of trying, but with the right time, right place for me, it was a blessing to be able to pull the victory, not only for me, but for the United States and for the run community.
Yeah, that was such a special video, and still gives me chills. Hearing you talk about it gives me chills, just kind of thinking about it. And I think it's always obviously so important, but particularly now when people are afraid. And I think people are afraid, and I think looking for things that are inspirational, stories for inspirational is so valuable. So I love hearing you talk about that. The last thing I want to talk about with you, Meb, is that people are kind of really approaching running differently right now. That before, people are really thinking about, and the different runners we've talked to on our running webinar, we've been talking about, professional level runners backing off their intensity, base building, and trying to keep their bodies moving versus, training for a particular race. And I'm wondering just what kind of advice you might have for runners. I'd say in my office, we're talking a lot about, strength building. Doing mileage is okay, but not tons and tons of intensity, just because we want them running, for life and for weeks and months and forward, not training for a particular active race hard. I'm wondering what kind of advice you might have to keep people going and on the road, things that have been helpful to you.
I think strength training is important. I think, the mileage right now, you don't want to do intensity because, you don't want to lower your immune system because you don't want to be prone to getting sick. But also there's no races that are in a week or 2 weeks unless you're doing virtual races like the Brooklyn half marathon. But it is time to run less and emphasize on the weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. We're not perfect, but how can you do the upper body, or there's a leg strengthening or core strengthening that can help you build it right now? So when you go outside and run, the body from core and the mileage will meet up and help you be more efficient as possible. Injury prevention. Don't wait to get injured to do core or strength training. Those are things that you need to maintain, especially as we get older, because we lose the flexibility, we lose the muscle tones, and this is a time to work on those areas. I mean, I have Meb Keflezighi, the book that I wrote. There's a lot of things nutritionally, strength training, recovery, which is important, and having fun. You want to do something that is something for lifestyle, because races are great, but at the same time you want to be able to do this for as long as possible and doing it in a fun way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's the medical advice we're giving too. And your book is a great resource, and we love it. I have it on my shelf. Meb for Mortals is a great book. And I remember doing our book events together at the 92nd Street Y.
As well, it's just, there's a lot of books and YouTube things that you can figure out. And this is a good time to pair out with somebody, those instructions that somebody can read the instruction, somebody else can do the exercise, or vice versa. And then it's a great time to involve your kids, because the kids they already are agile, but for us, we're just more laterally forward. And this is a time where you can do this bilateral movements and quick feet exercises, or dips, or push-ups, or crunches, and you can invite the kids or family members to do that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And both New York Road Runners Club and HSS have a whole series of strength videos and webinars that are terrific for people looking to improve strength and those types of things. So I think that advice is great. Meb, I just want to finish, and I think I will first say something, and I'll have you say something. Just a word to all the runners around the world who are going to be watching this video. And so I think I'll go first and just say that running is always so important for people. It's always so valuable. It's it's a big part of many of our days. Certainly a part of almost every one of my days. And I use running like you to clear my head and make my body feel better and be productive. But I think particularly now, running and being outside and being part of a virtual community, or a community where people are there, even though we're socially distanced for the moment, I think it's just so tremendously valuable to get out there and move every single day, and to know that this pandemic will come to an end, and that this is an important time to keep yourself healthy, keep your training in a moderate zone, and really trying to keep a positive attitude as best you can in the face of a really scary situation. So I guess from my perspective, I want to say thank you so much to Hospital for Special Surgery and New York Road Runners Club for allowing us to put on this program. And I want to leave the last words to Meb, who is just such an important figure in our sport. Meb, what do you want to tell the runners of the world? And then we'll go ahead and finish up.
I mean, running is a lifestyle. Running is something that all unites us, especially, marathons and like New York. It brings the world together. And with this pandemic, we're not able to do that right now with the Brooklyn Half Marathon or other races around the world. But keep your hope up. The beauty of running is you can go outside and maintain that fitness that you have. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. When this thing is over and races are open, people can do those. Whether it used to be high five or giving them a medal around their neck or, thumbs up and things like that. We miss those days, but at the same time, health comes first. And I'm grateful for the people who put on the front line to make this happen, because they put in their sacrifice and time and energy tirelessly to make these things possible. And, healthcare services, nurses and doctors and healthcare people, thank you for what you're doing. You're selfless to be able to do this thing. And I have a sister who is in that medical, and you guys are amazing. You guys are the true heroes. And for the running people, it's coming. But now, whether it's walking right now, you need to do those things. Just keep exercising, keep stretching, keep doing those, even squats at home. You don't have to go to the gym to do those things, and use the stairs to go backward to make sure your glutes are firing. So this is a time of balance, to kind of self-reflection of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and mentally, physically, and emotionally. So, don't give up. Keep fighting strong, and we will be back into running together again. And I'm just appreciative for all the running community, because it started with the t-shirt, but it made amazing friends and camaraderie. And I'm blessed to have those people.
I love it. Meb, thank you, my friend, so much for joining and speaking with everybody. We always love hearing from you, and particularly now, just really great words. Love seeing your face and your positive energy. On behalf of HSS and New York Road Runners Club, I'm Dr. Jordan Metzl. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep healthy, keep positive, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the road very soon. Thank you so much.